Scotland has always been a land of myth and legend. A lot of it is born out of the environment, about the landscape, the high mountains, the snow-topped mountains with the golden eagles, the deep, dark lochs, some of them hidden in crevices that have very few people ever explore these areas. But out of that, you get the Highland mists, you get the rains, and of course it just leads to a world of atmosphere and legend that I don't think many other countries can boast. Well, you're in Glamis Castle, or rather outside Glamis Castle. This ancient building has been here for about 1,000 years and reputed to be the most haunted castle in Scotland. Legend has it that the original building should have been built on a hill which is on the other side of the village. However, everything that was built up during the day was destroyed overnight, and this went on for several months until a voice was heard booming across the Vale of Strathmore. Don't build the castle here, build it down there, down in the bog, for defence, but also it meant that it wasn't being built at the home of the little people, because where they tried to build the hill was on fiery pans. Up on the hill, the home of the little people, the fairies.
This is the George Heriot School. It's thought to be the model for the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. It was built in 1628 at the bequest of royal goldsmith George Heriot himself. It was originally intended to provide education to Edinburgh's orphans. George Heriot is also made up of 4 houses, and the funny thing is those house colours correspond perfectly to the house colours at Hogwarts. And the funny thing is, J.K. Rowling actually sent her own children to this school. They were placed in Rayburn, which is the equivalent of Gryffindor. And it's not a boarding school. There's a theory that J.K. Rowling made Hogwarts a boarding school because it would just make it far too difficult and complicated as a storyline to have Harry go back to the Dursleys every evening. So it simplified it and made it a bit more mystical like that. We are in Greyfriars Kirkyard, which is a graveyard just outside the city centre of Edinburgh. This is a place that J.K. Rowling frequented, and she came here to write with lots of inspiration. It's definitely a place that just seeps out kind of inspiration and ideas, and definitely a lot of Harry Potter revolves around graves or ghosts or just thinking about the dead. And it's very easy to come and just stand right in front of a massive grave and get loads of ideas or descriptions or just a tactile feel that will help with just any kind of story and ideas to come along. It's such a beautiful city, even to anyone. Like, I came here 2 years ago and now moved right away. It's very, very old and full of history, and you can just walk everywhere. And I think that she was the kind of person who just loved to be outside and like came to write in the graveyard a lot, and it just has a lot of history and a lot of sources to draw inspiration from. On Google you can find a sketch that she did of her idea of Diagon Alley, which is taken at the bottom of Victoria Street. If you go on Grassmarket and look up that way, it's the exact same little archway and the curve and all that. I think it would obviously depend on the place. Like if she had gone somewhere to write, say perhaps America, it's very different because it's such a new place, whereas Scotland is very old, and so they have a lot of folklore and tales and, you know, superstitions and all that. And even just the buildings, again, the graveyards and the castles and everything that's so old and just teeming with inspiration, and it's like deliciously rich. And especially in Scotland, there's a lot of stories about witchcraft.
By the time you reach Hogwarts Castle, it couldn't be anywhere else. The deep loch, the high mountains, just as I've said, it's just a country of myth and legend. And if you had to have Hogwarts anywhere, that's the place to have it.
In terms of just being in a magical place, Scotland is really the top one in those books because it's just got so much to it in terms of that all history of, you know, people who practice magic and people who are accused of practicing magic. It's a very rich history to the, you know, all the myths that were born out of that culture. It's very nice.